Welcome to College Football Live. Maria Taylor, David Pollack, and Todd McShay. The first college football playoff rankings are out. Todd, what did you learn?
Head-to-head competition matters, thankfully.
Thank you. I agree with that, Todd. Thank God it matters. You know what I learned? Those polls that everybody writes up on the weekends, they mean squat to the committee. Thank God.
Thank God.
And I learned, guys, that 3 of the Power 5 conferences could be left out of the college football playoff this year, which could make some people a little upset. Let's get it rocking on College Football Live.
The discussion from teams 3 through 7 was as passionate as any that I can remember.
They're looking at teams that have been challenged.
I didn't think Notre Dame could run people over.
Georgia over Alabama is a strong message. They're going resume over reputation. Does it matter where they sit if they're both undefeated in Atlanta?
We're talking about getting 2 teams from the SEC. The only way that happens is if Georgia loses the SEC championship. Let's say Alabama loses. I don't think Alabama would have the resume based on that big-time win. I don't think the SEC could get 2 in at that point.
Well, the rankings, that's what everyone is talking about. Let's take a look at them. They're brought to you by Allstate, and Georgia is the top team in the inaugural rankings from the committee, followed by Alabama, Notre Dame, and Clemson in that top 4, while the unbeatens, Wisconsin, Miami, they are 9 and 10 respectively. So, Todd, do you agree that Georgia should be number 1 over Alabama at this point in the season?
I do. I mean, to be honest with you, I know it doesn't make for great television, but I think the committee nailed it in this first rankings that they released.
Dang them.
I know, right? It gives us nothing to yell at each other about. But no, the other night they asked us on our game to put together our top 4, and I put Alabama 1 and Georgia 2. And then yesterday when the polls came out, the rankings came out, I said, you know what? I just did it based off of jerseys. If you're being honest with yourself and you look at it, Alabama hasn't played a ranked team. You can qualify with that with Florida State however you want. And Georgia's beaten two ranked teams, including going on the road, Dave, and beating a really good number 3 Notre Dame team in their backyard. So right now the resume is better. Most importantly, I think the best 4 teams in college football are in the playoff if it were to happen today.
Yeah, and that is awesome because, listen, you can look at Alabama, Todd, and I'm sure you feel this way too. I watch Alabama, and there's not a big question mark. There's not a hole. I don't have a question at their quarterback spot like you might have with Georgia, but defensively, obviously, they're what they've been. They're physical. They're nasty. They're not going to beat themselves. Well coached. So, again, I could see them being the number 1 team in the country from that aspect. But, again, at number 3, you beat the number 3 team in the College Football Playoff Selection Committee's mind at their place. That you should get credit for that. So I thought Georgia should be 1, and they were. I have no qualms with the top 6. And like Todd mentioned to start the show, I absolutely love Oklahoma being ahead of Ohio State. Head-to-head has to matter in college football if resumes are equal.
Well, one of the best things about the situation we have in the SEC is that Georgia and Alabama, they're on a collision course that could take place at the SEC championship.
Hey, are we just forgetting about Auburn? Like, is it just a given that Georgia and Alabama are going to be undefeated playing in the SEC championship
game? It's not a given, but there's no reason. There's no reason for us to believe that Georgia would not win that game at this point in the season. Am I right, David? Are you saying you would take Auburn over Georgia right now?
Auburn is at home against both of those teams.
Yep.
Their defense is comparable to both of those teams.
Yep.
They're going to be that's one of the toughest atmospheres to play in college football. So, I mean, I would not be surprised if Auburn beat one of those 2 teams. So I know we like to do this, and let's point forward, let's do this. But, Auburn has something to say about it. And where they're ranked ahead of all the other 2-loss teams, they beat the number 1 team in the country, followed by the number 2 team in the country, and then they play another top 5 team in the SEC championship game. War Eagles going,
hey,
yeah, bro, I'm in the top 4.
How about this, David? I want to talk about teams that are in control of their destiny because Auburn is not. They would need a lot of other things to shake out and shake down in order for them to be placed in that top 4. Georgia and Alabama, on the other hand, have their destiny out in front of them, and they're still in control of it. If they played today on a neutral field, who would you roll with, the Tide or the Bulldogs? David?
I would go with the Tide, and I say that because Jalen Hurts has been in big games, and I trust him. And he also brings that element, Todd, of with his feet that is just, it's filthy. I mean, you can play great defense, just like Georgia has all year long, but they run that midline and read your three technique, and he takes off, and he gets an extra set of downs, and then they get an extra first down, and they get to impose their physicality. And I think the only big glaring spot to me would be just the quarterback spot in the quarterback run game where they could manufacture first downs and outscore Georgia in that aspect.
The only thing I would say, though, is if somehow you're able to, and I think Georgia's one of the few teams in the country with a front that's capable potentially to slow down the run and make Hurts throw the ball. I read this stat, and it's not shocking, but he's 4 of 23 throwing the ball beyond 20 yards down the field. So while he's improved and he is so dynamic, and obviously now he has experience, and the last play that he had of the 2016 season, he was scoring a touchdown. So he showed that he can be clutch. I just wonder if they go up against a defense like Georgia's, if Georgia's able to potentially slow down that run and force him to throw a little bit more and be effective as a passer. That to me is the only glaring weakness or weak spot that they have as a football team. But so far they've been able to overcome it, and I would bet on that they're able to overcome it against Georgia if they go head-to-head.
Let's talk about strengths and weaknesses, guys, of that number 3 team, Notre Dame right now. They're one of 4 teams that are top 10 in offensive and defensive efficiency. What do we think about them? Are they a championship caliber team right now, Todd?
You're saying Georgia?
Notre Dame.
Oh, Notre Dame. Notre Dame is right on the cusp for me. I think when I just look at the talent level and the coaching staffs and the way the teams have played for the most part, I think you look at Alabama, Georgia, and Clemson to me. Notre Dame's not far off, and I would say is ahead of all of those other teams we've talked about. Like, when you look at Oklahoma, they have a glaring defensive issue. Penn State is probably one of the more complete teams in the country, but I just don't know with their offensive line if they've stacked up against a team like Georgia or Alabama how they would perform. Ohio State, we've seen inconsistency. They were great the last 3 quarters. They had three offside penalties, false start penalties. They fumbled the ball away in the first quarter and had several drops in that game. So, are you going to get a complete game from that Ohio State squad? Whereas Notre Dame, I know that Brandon Wimbush is not throwing the ball at a very high level, but he's making more throws now than he was early in the season. And I think that they are a very, very much a complete football team right now.
Okay, Todd, here's my difference when I look at these teams. Clemson can absolutely suffocate you defensively.
Yes.
Georgia can suffocate you defensively. Alabama can suffocate you defensively. All 3 of those teams that we just talked about can do that. And I will say that there are question marks about their offense. Kelly Bryant, can he beat you consistently? Jalen Hurts, can he beat you consistently?
Yep.
Jake Fromm, can he beat you consistently? Notre Dame still has that. They can run the ball. Can the quarterback beat you? But they're not as suffocating defensively. That's where I think Notre Dame.
They're a lot better. But I agree. They're not at that level.
But they're not even close personnel-wise, size-wise, athleticism-wise as those other teams. They've still done a great job, and they deserve a ton of credit. But when I watch those guys on tape versus those defensive guys on tape versus Clemson versus Alabama versus Georgia, it's not the same.
Yeah, and that's why I think they're kind of that notch below. I think they're above some of the other teams, but I think they're a notch below those top 3.
All right, you keep bringing up Clemson, David, so let's talk about them a little bit more. Taking a look at the teams 4 through 6 in the college football playoff rankings. Clemson, they are in that 4th spot, but the metrics are giving Ohio State the best chance of finishing in the top 4 in strength of record out of this group. So we talk about Clemson, Todd. Maybe you can chime in on this. Do they deserve to be ranked number 4 despite that loss to Syracuse?
I think they deserve to be simply because the committee, it's very clear that they factored in the injury to Kelly Bryant in that game, and the fact that he hasn't really been 100% since. I think they've played better, obviously, than they did in that Syracuse game, but I think they focus a lot on the September for Clemson and not as much with the quarterback issue, especially against Syracuse, when they looked at it. And I'm okay with that. As long as the team bounces back and continues to play at a high level. We know this, David. If you watch enough tape and you study this, Clemson is clearly one of the 3 most talented football teams in the country.
No, there's no doubt. And here's the thing that when I look at this, first of all, Clemson is an offense that is based upon, watch the Georgia Tech game last week. It's based upon Kelly Bryant's feet. not his arm, his feet. He has to be a great runner. He's 6'4", he's 225 pounds. They can do so much in the run game with him. He wasn't there. I think they took that into account. They actually mentioned taking that into account. We also can't discount the wins that Clemson had early in the season. You don't want to point to Wake. They're a top 40 team. Clemson's played, I think, 6 top 40 teams.
Right.
They won at Virginia Tech. And again, I'm always going to say this. Playing away from home is the hardest thing to do in college football. To go on the road and win is incredibly difficult. So I think they get huge points for that, just like Georgia did get huge points against Notre Dame. They're not a complete offense yet, but if Kelly Bryant is healthy, it's a totally different team.
Yeah, you're right, David. Clemson right now with the 5th hardest strength of schedule among those ranked teams that we saw there. And also Kelly Bryant, he looked great, and he told me he feels great after that win against Georgia Tech in the rain. Well, there's plenty more to talk about here on College Football Live, but don't forget to vote for which team you think will be the Dr. Pepper One Final Team by using the hashtag #OneFinalTeam. And when we come back, could the committee leave out an undefeated Badger squad? Yeah, who's talking about Wisconsin? Maybe we need to be. I don't know. And then on Saturday at 3:30 Eastern, there you go. On ESPN, they're fresh off their remarkable comeback win over Penn State. J.T. Barrett and the 6th-ranked Ohio State Buckeyes battling Iowa in Kinnick Stadium. It's a tough place to play. You'll be able to watch it live on ESPN or stream it on the ESPN app.
College Football Live is brought to you by Dr. Scholl's Massaging Gel Insoles.
All right, let's take a look at a clean performance brought to you by American Standard. Although these guys are unbeaten, Wisconsin and Miami, they were ranked 9th and 10th by the committee. A potential reason why, though, both are outside of the top 30 in strength of schedule with a combined record of the opponents for each being under 500. Let's start with Wisconsin, Todd. If the Badgers are to win out, do you think they make the playoff?
It's tough. It's tough. I'm really not convinced of it, to be honest with you. And I know, obviously, the strength of schedule will improve because they'll have beaten, let's say, Ohio State or one of whoever represents the other side. But you look at that, 78th right now in the nation in terms of schedule played to this point. It's so much different than almost every other person or every other team we're talking about in the top 10. So I'm not convinced. I would be much more convinced with Miami than I would be with Wisconsin if you told me both teams won out.
They would need a lot of help, is the bottom line, because if you think about a Big 12 team, the Big 12 team with one loss, so to speak, is going to have a lot more quality wins. I mean, that's just, it's going to be, and it's not going to be by a little bit. It's going to be by a lot. And it's going to be 3 or 4 more quality wins. You know what they need, Todd? They need Ohio State to win out. And they need Ohio State to be ranked really high, right, and they need to put it on Ohio State. That would give them the best chance to be in. But just winning out, I don't think gives them a guarantee of being in the college football playoffs.
Yeah, and it hurts, too, when you talk about the non-conference. And I know when they scheduled BYU probably looked like a pretty good opponent. But it hasn't been the case this year. And then FAU and then Utah State are the 3. And so, and then playing in their division against a lesser competition, they do play Michigan, but they don't get Ohio State or Penn State. I agree. The only chance that they would have is if Ohio State wins out and continues to rise up the rankings, and they knock them off right at the end, and it's fresh on everybody's mind.
Damn.
Lesser competition might be an understatement, Todd. A 99% chance to win the Big West is what they're being given right now by FPI. I don't know how often that happens, but apparently
it's that 1%, I'd like to know.
Yeah, exactly. What about Miami right now? Are we even giving them a chance to win out? David, do you believe that that's a possibility based on what you've seen from the Canes through the first half of the season?
No, I don't think they will win out. I think they'll lose to Virginia Tech this weekend. But I'll say this, they found a way to win so far. And if they win the rest of their games, guys, they're in the college football playoffs. Like, they control their own destiny. Obviously, an enormous test with Virginia Tech. I think Virginia Tech's a really, really good football team. Then they play Notre Dame, the number 3 team in the country. Well, then they have a chance to, guess what? Who'd they lose to, Todd? They lost to Clemson, right? Guess who they could play in the ACC championship game? They could play Clemson. So, I mean, Miami, actually, no, I'm sorry, that would be Virginia Tech.
Virginia Tech, yeah.
Wow, totally messed it up. But anyways, Miami has enough on their schedule, 100%, to earn their way into the Final Four.
Yeah, they can. They'll be in, I really believe, if they wind up winning out. But I just, nothing I've seen so far leads me to believe that they will win out. I agree. I think Virginia Tech knocks them off this week. I think Notre Dame's going to, they're very likely to beat Miami at Miami. But, the good news is, and I know no one wants to hear this, but this program is heading in the right direction, and you're finally starting to see them win games at the end that they would have lost in previous years. I mean, it's been, I think, 15 years since they've had double-digit wins. They had the Arkansas State game canceled, so it'll be difficult to get there, but they're heading in that direction where they're going to have double-digit wins in a season for the first time in 15-plus years. So this is heading in the right direction, even though the next couple of weeks might get a little bit ugly.
Yeah, right now they're 5-0 in ACC play, but 4 of those wins have come by a combined 18 points, so they're playing really close. But if they beat Virginia Tech, they win the Coastal. So I talked to Braxton Berrios, said that's all they're talking about right now. It is that game.
He's been balling,
it is live or die.
He's balling.
He's been balling.
All right, guys. Well, coming up, someone who hasn't really been balling, but he talks a lot, Paul Feinbaum. He's going to tell us why the potential of 2 SEC teams in the playoff could mask the conference's other issues. David, I knew you would love that. Plus, could the college football playoff be coming to your city? We're going to have the exclusive reveal of the sites for 2021 through 2024. Those locations coming up after the break. And we talked about it a little bit. Saturday, we have some great games coming your way. Clemson taking on NC State at 3:30. And you can also stream that on the ESPN app in the game that Braxton Berrios is talking about. Miami trying to clinch the division against Virginia Tech at home. That's your nightcap on ABC, Saturday at 8 Eastern, streaming on the ESPN app.
Computer, execute 12.4p operation.
Optimizing algorithm. Running encryption packet alpha. Night. Oh, I don't feel so good.
What is it, computer?
Is it hot in here? It feels hot in here. I feel a little clammy. I should lie down or something.
A computer with a virus? Surprising. What's not surprising? How much you could save by switching to Geico.
Those oysters Rockefeller were a mistake.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more.
Time for a little exclusive reveal. The sites for the college football playoff championship games from 2021 to 2024. There they are. Hard Rock Stadium in Miami gets 2021. 2022, the title game will be in Indianapolis. And the new forthcoming NFL Stadium in LA gets 2023, while Houston's NRG Stadium will host it in 24. Now, Paul's going to drop a little SEC knowledge on us in today's F-Bomb.
So in a year that many have blasted the SEC, saying it's down, it's not what it used to be, look what happened with the first college football playoff poll. Alabama, Georgia. Georgia 1, Bama 2, and some other SEC schools mentioned fairly prominently. But does it really change the narrative? Does it really change the image that this league is down? Listen, I cover the league day in, day out. It is down. After the first 4 or 5, it's pretty mediocre. That's why so many coaches are on the hot seat. One's already been fired, many more to come. But it is also interesting that what you do in the playoff can mask your problems. And I think with the Alabama and Georgia possibility of both getting in, it will overshadow the fact that the SEC is no longer the best conference in college football. It will quiet it for a while. It won't end the debate forever. But for now, all that matters is what's going on at the top. And at the top, the SEC looks very, very good.
All right, always appreciate it, Paul. Hey, David, would you rather have 2 teams in the top 4 or have like a league that is good from top to bottom? What would you rather have?
Well, obviously, you'd rather have a league that's good from top to bottom. I mean, but when the SEC West was the dominant force, and that was when Auburn won a national title, LSU won a national title, and Alabama. And so, you need to have that again. It's going to be tough to do for anybody. I mean, look at the Big Ten. People wants to brag on the Big Ten East, and Ohio State's the only one that's won a title. Michigan's been third in the conference, or not winning bowl games. Michigan State obviously hadn't won anything in the playoffs, or so. It's tough to do, man.
All right, well, let's stay in the SEC for now and talk about how important head-to-head is for the committee, because Auburn is at 14. They're 5 spots ahead of LSU despite losing to them a couple of weeks ago. So, Todd, are we good with that, or that's cool?
The majority of the rankings, I think they showed the head-to-head is important. I think my guess is, and I can live with this, especially this low in the 25, that Troy loss at home was embarrassing.
Yep.
You cannot lose to Troy at home.
Yep, Troy lost at home. And again, if you watch the game, Auburn absolutely melted. I mean, like Olaf when he goes out in the sun, man. I mean, goodness gracious, up 20 points. And you were in Death Valley again. You played them on the road, so it's a tough spot to play.
All right, Washington 7-1. They're the highest-ranked Pac-12 team. Todd, are we giving the Huskies and the Pac-12 any chance of making the playoff this year?
They certainly can. I mean, here's the thing. I don't think they've
Man,
played
are they
to the
can or
level
are you giving them a chance, dog?
He's saying there's a chance.
I don't think they're going to. Let me just put it that way. But they still technically have a shot at it. They're not playing at the level, but Chris Peterson is a great coach.
Yes.
I give him, it's kind of like David Shaw and Stanford. They always get better as the season goes on. I'll be interested to see if they continue to improve, but so far they don't look like a championship team.
All right, David, will Penn State be on the outside looking in for a second year in a row?
Yes, I think they will, just because if you look at the schedule, who else are they going to beat that's going to make you go, wow? I mean, we talked about Auburn. There's room for growth. You talk about some of those other teams. Iowa State, there's room for growth. What can Penn State do? Who are they going to beat the rest of the way that's going to make you go, wow? Who's their non-conference schedule that made you go, wow? It's just there's not a lot on the resume. Oh, yeah, my bad.
And you need Ohio State to lose, too. So they're in a tough spot now.
Yeah, well, I like it. Those are some quick hitters from the college football playoff rankings. Coming up next, Dabo Swinney, he gets the pants scared off of him. Yeah, you might want to see this video. Stick around for a little bit. And we always have great games coming your way, so make sure you stay tuned for an insane Saturday. One more game to break down for you.
Grab me if you picked the wrong.
College Game Day, built by the Home Depot, live from Oklahoma State, Saturday at 9 a.m. on ESPN.
College Football Live is brought to you by Dr. Scholl's Massaging Gel Insoles.
Last day of October. All right, happy Halloween. All you guys. All right, so don't get. Ooh.
Lights out.
Hey.
I just love it every single time. It doesn't get old. You guys like the stair step there Dabble does? Yeah, that's cute.
That's outstanding. Hey,
yeah,
that reminds me
Dabble
of
got
Kirk
a little
Herbstreit.
scared.
That reminds me of Kirk Herbstreit jumping out of himself.